Good morning. Welcome to the garden. Thank you for being here with us this morning. I suppose you think it's the last time you're going to get out for the next 3 days, and so I had to take advantage of it. But it's okay today, so we'll take every moment of that we can get. Also, I just wanted to mention to you, this is a different kind of service this morning, and when I encounter people who are here for the first time or early on in their time, I usually try to warn them and say things like, you never know what you're going to get, and every Sunday's kind of different. So this is one of those difference that every Sunday is, but it's just a different kind of theme and a different kind of focus as well. When I started working on this message, I thought about a service we did a bunch of years ago now, where we began talking about road signs and how they warned us, how they told us something that we might be going to experience. And when you think about it, there are all kinds of signs along the highway that give us warning as to things that we may need to be aware of and cautious about. There are those that tell us that there's a sharp curve ahead, or that reduced speed, or we're going to merge with traffic, or there's oncoming traffic. And sometimes we see signs that tell us that there could be wildlife on the road, or something could cross over the road. And so we have to pay attention to all of those because they tell us of possible trouble that we can encounter. What occurs to me that sometimes I think life needs one of these signs that says warning, danger ahead, because we encounter all kinds of things in the course of living our lives that can derail us and trip us up and slow us down, or cause us to change our action. Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, "As soon as there is life, there is danger." And that's very, very true. Because we live, we don't stay in our shells and cower in a corner. We have to engage with life. We have to live life. But by its very nature, it's possible that we could encounter some troublesome times. And it would be helpful sometimes if we had someone or something who would warn us of the danger that could be lying ahead. I was thinking about, actually, this message was scheduled originally for some time last fall, and then it got moved a couple times because of some other things. And when I had started work on it last fall, it was right about the time that those tornadoes went through in November, I think, that went through like Kokomo and some of the areas north of us. It was very atypical. It was kind of a weird time of the year for there to be tornadoes. And I remember seeing some of the reports about responses to the weather, and how some people really heeded the sirens and the warning signs that were there, that trouble was imminent, that danger was there, and took cover. And as a result of that, they fared fairly well. But those people who didn't either hear the sirens or heed the warning didn't do quite so well, typically speaking. And so that's one of the situations that brought this whole thing to mind, that we do encounter not just weather, but all kinds of things. I read, for example, about the number of people in our country who actually get behind the wheel and drive the car when they're tired or sleepy. In fact, the National Sleep Foundation said some 60% of Americans admit to having driven a car when they were tired and sleepy. And you know the symptoms, I do too. The signs are all there. The eyes get droopy, you start squirming, trying to kind of stay awake, we yawn and all those kinds of things. And yet sometimes we don't heed that. 37% of people said that they had actually fallen asleep. Now, hopefully no serious harm had come as a result of that, but yet that's a dangerous situation. Now, when I was doing my work for this message, I Googled the words warning signs. It is astounding what you'll find out there, because there's every kind of situation you can possibly think of that we can find the signs, the things that we need to be aware of, that we need to pay attention to. One of the first things I encountered, kind of high on that list, was signs of stroke or heart attack. Things like slurred speech, or drooping in the facial features, or sometimes a tightness in our chest, or shortness of breath, those kinds of things. That's something that happens there. Sometimes we see signs that trouble is brewing in a family, that there's maybe a person who could be some trouble looming ahead. In fact, I read an article about the family of Jared Loughner, who's the man who shot and killed 6 people in a Tucson strip mall 2 or 3 years ago, including Congressional Representative Gabby Gabby Gifford, who's still recovering from her injuries. His parents apparently were aware there was problem there. There was some really serious trouble. They had taken his gun away from him. They had him in counseling. They had him tested for drugs. And they disabled his car at night so that he couldn't go anywhere. And yet, even though they saw the signs and even though they tried to respond to them, they weren't necessarily adequate or appropriate to deal with the severity of the situation. Now, if you were here late last summer, we talked about bullying. And the signs are all there of people who are being bullied, as well as those who are potential or maybe already are bullying others. And we talked about what we need to think about and what we need to do if we discover those situations, if we come upon them. Yet another situation that is way more prevalent than most of us ever imagine has to do with domestic violence. In fact, I was talking to a friend not long ago who shared with me about a friend of hers that she was really concerned about. She said that she was in relationship with what she described as a mean-spirited person. And she sensed that this person was trying to isolate her friend from her and from her family and other such situations. And she was concerned that there could well be some abuse going on, some violent kinds of behavior going on. Well, those are just examples of the kind of life situations that we find all too often, way more than we think about it. And if that's the case, what should we do? You know, some of the times, I suppose we're sort of oblivious to things. We don't really pay a lot of attention. But if and when we do, and when we see things that alarm us to some degree, what should we do about that? You know, should we intervene? Should we say something? Or should we keep to ourselves? Is it any of our business, or are we just being a troublemaker when we come in here? It really kind of puts us in an awkward situation. And yet, I think as people of faith, it seems to me that there is something that's called for from us when we encounter those kinds of situations. And I think that's what the Apostle Paul is talking about, at least to a degree, in the Bible passage that we have for this morning. He's writing to the people in the church in Rome. And he's trying to give them, and I think as a result of that, us, instructions on what it means for us to live together with other people and how we are here to kind of take care of one another and care for ourselves and for others. This is how our version reads. Those of us who are strong and able in the faith need to step in and lend a hand to those who falter, and not just do what is most convenient for us. Strength is for service, not status. Now, I suppose many of us would try to find a disclaimer there and say, well, strong and able in the faith. Well, I don't have that kind of strong faith and working on it. But I think that's all it takes, just to be aware that we are people who are trying to be as faithful and as loving and as kind and as helpful as we can possibly be. And if that's who we are, and I think we all are, we wouldn't be here this morning. If that's who we are, then I think there's something called from us. And that means that we have to pay attention, that we have to step in, and then we have to act. We have to do something in one way or another to help remedy a situation, to bring attention to the situation, to try to bring help in it. You know, we are here to enhance the well-being of one another. It's a mutual kind of thing. That's what we're all about. And so it's important that we do that. If you've heard me say it once, you've heard me say it lots and lots of times. You know, what happens to one of us happens to all of us. What affects one of us affects all of us, because we all are interconnected with one another. And we are here to live this life together to the best of our ability. Well, I tried to come up with some sort of an example that we could think about, maybe one that wasn't quite as heavy and wasn't quite as difficult as some others, although it can still be difficult. And the one I came up with, as inadequate as it probably was what to do with, say, a friendship that we kind of have this sense that something's wrong. You know, that it's on rocky road. It's not quite what it's been. And if we find ourselves in that situation and kind of wondering what's happening there, maybe we need to try to as objectively as we can, assess the situation and ask ourselves some questions. For example, what's it like when we're with this person? Do we like the person we are there? Do they bring out the best in us? What about, what's the nature of the relationship? Is there give and take? Is it balanced, or is it really way off balanced? Does the other person really know or seem to care about us, or is concerned at all about us? Is there a mutuality as a part of that? And then I think we probably have to ask questions of ourselves too. Is this just this relationship, this friendship that where I'm experiencing that, or is it something that's happening in other places that I need to be aware of, or is it something just with this person? And then once we've done that, we need to think, okay, is this something that's just begun? That's just a short-term thing? And is that an indication of something else? Or is this more of a long-term thing that if I'm really honest, I can say that this has been going on for some time and it's becoming increasingly a problem? So we've got to, as to the best of our ability, try to assess the situation. And then we have to decide what we want to do about it. Is there enough here? Is there enough on the side of continuing the relationship that we can have the conversation we need to have, and that we can begin to change the things that need to be changed and create a relationship that is solid and on a good, sound foundation? Or is this something that is simply too destructive, too dangerous, too problematic to try to rescue? In whatever case it is, we have to have the conversation. We have to at least share where we are, and we have to always act with love and kindness and respect in every situation. Well, as I say, that's probably, I know those can be difficult and painful, but that's probably a pretty simple example compared to some of the complex situations in which we often find ourselves. But, for instance, suppose that we know, and this is something educators encounter all the time, that there's a child in the class who is in trouble, who's got some trouble brewing there. How do we handle that? How do we deal with the school? How do we deal with the parents? And how do we deal with the child, him or herself? How do we really deal with that? Suppose we have a friend who drinks too much and gets behind the wheel of a car. How do we go about intervening in that action and making sure that everybody is safe and well cared for? Now, what happens if we know someone or we observe someone and we're pretty sure there seems to be symptoms, at least, of an eating disorder there, and we're aware that that's something that's probably far deeper than anything we can handle, and so how do we deal with that? Do we get professional help? Do we talk to someone who can help us or help our friend get to that kind of help? There's all those kinds of situations. But in whatever we encounter, I think the bottom line is, as people who consider ourselves people of faith, it's important that we open our eyes and our ears and we really try to pay attention to all of those situations in which we see, to look for any danger signs, anything that could tell us something is amiss, and then to act, to step in and do the best we can, because we are here to care for one another and help one another. I was thinking about the situation that happened this last week at Purdue University, and I can't help but think that certainly there were some sort of signs that someone might have observed had we just been paying attention at that time. And what came to mind when I was thinking of that situation was the phrase that they're using when you see something, say something. Well, I guess that would be the bottom line of what we're talking about today. When we see situations that are warning signs of something that could be really, really problematic and troublesome, either for another person or for us, then we need to say something and we need to act. I think we have to gather our best wisdom. We have to seek help if that's what we need. And then we have to act. We have to act out of love. That's the only way I know to really be people of faith who live out our faith.